So good afternoon. Thank you, everyone on the Recovery Funds Task Force for joining us. Today is July 21st, 2022, 7 p.m. And we are having a public teleconference to recap the ideas that we discussed last week, the ones that we presented to, that I presented to the rest of the council. And to hear out any final thoughts and close out the task force today for the time being until we're called to action, I guess you can say, again, later on down the line. Any questions on the agenda that we have posted? No? Great. Okay. In that case, let me see how Don is what I'm sorry. Did my mic go out?
I can hear you.
So in that case, for Phil and Jean, just calling to order the task force meeting today. What day today is the 21st, 7 p.m. And a quick overview of the agenda, including review of what we discussed last week, we'll present it to the council, and a closeout. So during our last our last task force meeting, excuse me, I'm getting over a bit of a cold, we had, I think, a pretty fruitful discussion as to what recommendations the task force had in mind, and in fact, even put them in order of importance as to the ones that are the most likely to use ARPA funds for. We had also concluded that using ARPA funds for bigger, larger projects was going to be a better use and a quicker use of ARPA funds in the long run. Barbara, do we have the recovery task force list of the ideas?
Yeah.
Can you put that on for me, or should I?
Either I can put it up, I think, Donna, because I think it's, yeah, here it is. The print's not super big, but hopefully everyone can see it.
Great, thank you. So basically from our task force, the two main projects that were gathered support were town hall upgrade and stormwater abatement. Our summary of those of town hall upgrade, it was submitted by two task force members and supported by other individuals during our extensive conversation. Provided some suggestions as to what kind of improvements came to mind, including, kitchen renovations, HVAC, windows, etc. Stormwater came in as number 2, also was highly recommended, and the possible projects and ideas to be supported through that included Montrose to Claremont, opposite of Porcupine Woods, blockages under the railroad, any and other all storm water issues that we might have in town. Other noteworthy points were electric vehicle charging stations, the assistance to the development, I guess, or the demolition, in this case, to the Endo property, a city lights improvement, recycling bins, sidewalk replacement on between Montrose and Rokeby, as well as undergrounding of the poles and wires on Rokeby, not too far from the train station, dog park upgrade, and broadband at the pool and other public spaces. And those were also, like I said, all those last 1, 2, 3, 8 recommendations were smaller projects, and I guess you could call them secondary. As such, in the last 2 council meetings, I reported back on our meeting and reported that the task force was recommending the town hall upgrade and the stormwater. During our last meeting, I also mentioned that the onus of the task force had slightly changed because we had much broader much more leeway in how funds are being spent, requiring much less oversight and less structured application for the processes, RFPs, et cetera, and that we could in fact submit ARPA funds and use ARPA funds for larger projects that were already in progress. So as a result, presented the town hall upgrade and the stormwater. However, between the last two council meetings and this one, received some feedback from, Barbara and I received some feedback from a number of the task force members. And so I wanted to make sure that everyone's voices were heard, if they had something to add or, have a comment on or have questions about. So with that, I'd like to ask Barb if she has anything else to say, and then open the floor.
Yeah, the only other thing that I would just add is just sort of an update on where we are with certain items. So the mayor and town council are scheduled to hold a work session about the town hall renovation on Wednesday, August 31st. I think as you all are aware, there's kind of a discussion that needs to be had with the county about who actually has ownership and maintenance responsibility for the stormwater infrastructure in Garrett Park. We had one meeting with the county. I don't remember the exact date. I think it was back in May, perhaps. And Councilmember Shulk, who's on the call, Mayor Welch, and I will be having a follow-up discussion with the county next week. We pulled together a bunch of documents, trying to make the town's case that the county owns the infrastructure and is responsible for it. So the meeting next week is a follow-up to get the county's reaction to the documentation we provided to them. And that's all I had, Donna.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Barbara. While we have the project ideas up, would anyone on the task force have a question or like to add to any of the points that we have here listed? And by that, I mean any additional, well, not only project descriptions, which are less likely, but more about the summary. If there's additional details that perhaps we don't have here that you would like to make sure that are included.
Hey, Donna, this is Naveed.
Yes, Naveed, go for it.
The Yindle property, that's fourth on the list right now. I know I'm also on the Park and Open Space Committee, and I know that's kind of getting a lot more traction right now. It's getting closer to. Can you hear me? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. I know that's coming up, and there's a lot more expenditures coming up shortly, and in terms of demolition and some work on that, and that's not a small dollar item expenditure. So I was just wondering if there's some consideration of making that like in the top 3 and putting potential ARPA funds available for that, because I think that'll be immediate use and it's not small dollar, just for consideration.
Thank you. Thank you, Naveed. Anyone else would like to add anything?
Donna?
Yes, go ahead, Carolyn.
I would be willing to move the Yandell property up ahead of the stormwater. Not that we don't need the stormwater, but that it is a project that is coming into fruition, and goodness knows we'll never get things straight with the county in all likelihood. So thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. I appreciate your words. I'll put that down. Would anyone else like to? And I apologize, I can't see everyone's screen, so please feel free to jump in here. No need to raise your hand.
I would support moving the Yindell property up, whether it's ahead of stormwater or not. The council, well, I assume, will be making the eventual decision, and hopefully at the time they'll know something about the stormwater and as well as the Yindell property, and we'll be able to make appropriate decisions. But where it goes, but whether it's second or third, I don't think it matters.
Okay. Anyone else?
I know that this is Pat Maloney. I know that I see that the dog park update is on there. I know that my wife made a presentation to the town council last night requesting a committee be formed to think about whether it might be possible to do some updates to that, which I think was referred to the Parks and Rec Committee for further action. So I would just say, I only say that in that instead of like restricting ourselves to just restructuring and repaving for dog, maybe just broaden that a little bit to be, for dog park update, just improvements, right? Which is broad enough to cover anything that might come out of the work through the Parks and Rec Committee. It's not as teed up as the Yindle property is, so I think it would be sort of into next year before you would be ready to think about anything.
Okay. Great.
Donna?
Yes.
I was on the County Board of Appeals as chair for 9 years, and I'm familiar with the zoning that's involved. The pool and the dog park are zoned as single family residence. And in order to build anything there, we would have to do one of two things. Get a zoning text amendment through the planning board and the county council, which is not easy. And secondly, in any case, to build anything, we would have to apply for a building permit from the county. The Department of Permitting Services would look at that and deny it because of the zoning. And the only thing that one could do about that then is to go to the Board of Appeals and ask to be heard as a petition for special exception. That would entail a hearing at which people who favor any improvements in terms of building would be able to make a presentation, but everyone who was opposed could speak up, and it would take a vote. Special exceptions are very hard to get. The Board of Appeals does not vote for many of them. And this is from my experience.
Thank you, Carolyn. Quick question, however. There's nothing on the plot currently. Why would we need a building permit to build nothing?
If to build something.
Well, typically I'm just thinking out loud here, but the dog park usually doesn't have any buildings on it. It would just be pretty much repaving or upgrading
different.
just the location. That's really what we're looking at.
Oh, I was speaking only in terms of a building structure.
Gotcha. Understood.
The paving, that's another matter.
Okay. And that's only for building.
Carolyn, can I ask you a question? I know one of the things, and Pat, jump in here, that Leslie presented to the mayor and town council was this idea of maybe like a picnic pavilion. Do you think that would be problematic?
Yeah, oh, indeed, it would be.
Again, like I'm not, and again, I don't want to get into the merits of whatever might come of the group of people who are interested in seeing if the very vocal desires of individuals in the community to have some sort of community space to hold events, as well as having a dog park located in Garrett Park. Like I'm not trying to like bog this down here. My understanding is that like that effort was referred to the Parks Committee, and that there would be, I think at the end of that part, the only thing I was trying to say is that the language that's in the document of recommendations right now is sort of restricting to, restructuring and repaving. And I was saying, it could be that at the end of that process, there might be some other suggestion that is not just restructuring and repaving, which we might want to allow ourselves the opportunity to use these funds to pay for that whenever that plan comes forward.
Okay.
That was it.
No,
there's
nothing wrong, Thomas. You said nothing wrong. It's all good.
Nothing wrong.
Really, totally.
Yeah, and Pat, what I jotted down was just your suggestion that instead of listing restructuring and repaving, just leave it sort of generic in terms of improvements.
Right.
I love preserving optionality. So
yeah.
so improvements is good for me.
Okay.
Great. We'll make sure to add that. I do have a question is that anyone else on the task force that would like to say anything before
it's related to
Lisa. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, it was related to the dog park, and sorry I missed the presentation yesterday, but I think based on conversations, that was what I had in mind as well, like some general, not just restructuring and repaving, but sort of addressing this idea of having some sort of gazebo or picnic space or pavilion or something like that. It was brought to my attention, some of the zoning issues around the pool and that property there, and the fact that if you make it an official dog park, then the county will list it as a dog park. So this is what somebody who was previously on the Parks and Rec committee had told me, and then it has to be open to the county if it's an actual dog park, which I don't know if people would necessarily want that, because that would potentially increase traffic to that area. So that's not what I want.
Here know about it anyway. Anyone with a dog does, at least that's what I know. So basically, we have an illegal dog park, you're saying, from what you understand.
What we have is not actually an official dog park.
Gotcha.
But that ends up working out for the town.
I'll have to talk with Barbara about that. At least not everyone is objected to, people who, there are plenty of dog parks around here. In fact, there's a really fancy schmancy one down the street if anybody's interested. But this one is definitely handy, I'd have to say.
And yes.
You're going to say, Thomas, go ahead.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Donna, I'd like to say something.
Yes, ma'am.
Barbara very kindly sent me the review that the town had done in, I guess it was 2015, of the town hall status and what needs to be fixed there. And in 2015, it came up to $1.5 million estimate. So I would anticipate that now it's even more than that. And I think what we really need to do is fix and repair our existing buildings. And given the amount of vandalism this town has had recently, I can't see putting another structure up that someone's going to want to try to destroy over at the dog park.
Okay, I hear you. Yeah, I think there's two lines of thinking with the dog park. One's that makes it a decent dog park, and one that makes it a dog park plus. And I think there's it's like a twofer, I guess you could say.
Right.
But go ahead. I'm sorry. Did not mean to interrupt. You're saying fix and repair.
No, I was just saying. I was just thinking that we should fix up the town hall first. That's my priority, and that will be expensive. And if we don't get going, it's not going to be done in time. We do have a time limit on these funds.
That's true. I am less concerned with that than most people, to be honest, and completely transparent. Doesn't mean we should be dragging our feet, of course, because there are a lot of things that we are, unfortunately, have no control over in regard to the town hall upgrade and stormwater. Those are the first two things. But I do have a question, if it's okay, if there's nothing else, Barbara. I don't mean to cut you off. I don't want to cut you off. Is there anything else, ma'am?
No, I just don't understand why you're not anxious to move forward.
Oh, I am anxious to move forward. I just don't think there's things with meetings of both the town hall and the stormwater that we have no control over. As soon as that opens up, then we are ready and willing and able to jump in with both feet, when it's necessary. There's things we can't move faster than they're moving, is my point. I'm not against dragging my feet. I just know that we need to be ready in the wings when those wings open up, if that's the right saying.
So we're going to wait until August 31st to make any movement on fixing the town hall?
I would guess so. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
We won't have a choice.
Yeah, I mean, I think the issue, if I may, is at least during my tenure in the town, when people talk about the town hall renovation, there seem to be different ideas of what exactly that would entail. So I think the idea is on the 31st is for the mayor and town council to sort of have that conversation about what it means to each one of the elected officials and to agree on what the scope of any renovation to town hall will entail.
This has been studied for almost 10 years now.
It's been going on
a lot of foot dragging.
Hmm.
And I thought that this committee could actually stimulate some action.
And I think to some degree, Barbara, you all have by making this your number one of your top two priorities. And I think, Dick, I think spoke, very directly to the need to actually have projects that can be accomplished in the time frame with the ARPA fund. So I know that the mayor's intention is to try to really have a robust discussion on the 31st and to try to basically reach some resolution on what exactly is the project that we're moving forward with. So I don't have your 10-year history, Barbara, but I think I'm optimistic that there will definitely should be some movement in terms of at least defining what the project even is.
Yeah.
And will that work session be open to the public?
It will be. I think, as to the best of my knowledge right now, it will actually be held at Town Hall, is the intention. And certainly, like any other meeting, it will be open to the public. So it will be specifically, it's Wednesday, August 31st, and it will begin at 7 o'clock. And it's scheduled to run until about 9:30. I think that there will also be just some discussion at the work session about the town office and some possible upgrades to the town office as well.
Thank you, Barbara. Appreciate it. I do have one last question. If there's no one on the task force that'd like to add anything to the points we just heard. And that is to Naveed, Carolyn, Dick. Your support of and moving points on moving up the Yendel property and the list of order of importance. Would you please tell me why you find that more important than, say, stormwater or the town hall upgrade, if that's the case? So I understand better.
Basically with Dick, it could be 2 or 3. It's just that a stormwater requires us to deal with the county, and we don't have to with the Yendel property. And it's something that we do need to move on since the terms of the gift was to remove the house. And once we do that, we need to clear and prepare the areas apart. So there's something of a budget for it already. And that was the only reason I was speaking up for it. I dealt with Mrs. Schindel in gifting that to the town, and I just feel a little more personal feeling about it.
Understood. Makes sense.
Go
ahead, Naveed. Yes, sir.
Yeah, for my purposes, again, it is because it will have a set dollar amount and it will be clear within a matter of, I think, months. Barbara is doing a great work of moving it forward. I think then it just allows us to use the funds to move that forward. Because I know the last few meetings, just the dollar amount that's associated with that has crept up. And if we save some money from that allocated budget, then it can be used for town hall or stormwater for the city. So that's the only reason, because I know it's coming up and it's coming up sooner than
Okay.
the other will go. That's all.
So do I understand you correctly? Are you saying that you're saying the amount that's already budgeted for the Yendel property, I think it's a 75, is not sufficient?
I think we're still going through that and we're getting estimates, but yeah, I do not think that's sufficient. And there's some
And what is, and in the groups, in the Parks and Open Spaces Committee's, I guess, analysis and thought process, what is that supposed to budget for, aside from the removal of the house? Anything else?
I defer that to Barbara, and because I think that's still kind of coming together as what the cost is. But I think it's the 75,000 we're anticipating to be just the demolition cost, and then the tree and all the other work that we want to do. I don't think there's a set dollar yet.
Yeah, I think some, just for the task force's benefit, I know this will be old hat to some of you, but there's a state program called Program Open Space, and there is an allocation that Garrett Park is eligible for. So as part of, at least getting into county parks' work plan, we had to kind of come up with some estimates. So I had worked with Phil Normandy, the town arborist, and also Councilmember Schultz, just to come up with some numbers. So these are all, kind of estimates. We have some studies that are going on right now that are basically going to be paid from the reserve funds, but best, kind of approximate estimate for tearing down the house is probably about $75,000. That cost may go up slightly because there is some, asbestos back tile in the house. So basically it just means that there's some additional steps that need to be taken during the demolition process. Phil Normandy, our arborist, had kind of done an assessment of the property, which obviously hasn't had some attention in some time in terms of invasives, tree pruning, things of that nature. His estimate for that work is probably about $25,000. Actual construction is probably in the range of about 150,000 roughly. Actually designing the park is probably about 50, if I'm doing my math correctly here, and then there are, Councilmember Schultz mentioned there may be some drainage issues on the property. So sort of all told, to sort of turn this into, it's a passive park, I think the Parks and Open Spaces Committee has sort of discussed as a priority, maybe something in a realm of like a meditative garden, kind of a reflective space, but all told, it's probably about a $350,000 project. And, those are rough numbers, but they're probably in the ballpark of what we would be looking at to do something that sort of matches probably what Mrs. Yendel's had hoped for, I think, when she donated the property. And certainly Carolyn can speak to that better than anyone since she was involved in that donation process.
Actually, I would like to hear that because I'm trying to see the benefit that the Yendel property would bring as opposed to stormwater abatement or an improved town hall. And I'd like to, if you can fill in my knowledge gaps in regard to that, I'd really appreciate it.
And that's a question for Carolyn, correct, Donna?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't perceive it as a question.
That's quite all right.
That's why I wanted to clarify.
I was just asking for clarification.
Thank you, madam. I think the meditative garden idea would be very in keeping with Mrs. Yendel's wishes. She is a lovely lady and very much looking forward to having nature have an opportunity to be beautiful and to let people have a peaceful place to reflect and meditate. So I think that's a very good idea, Naveed, for you and your committee. And I hope I've answered your question.
Thank you, Carolyn. So in addition to it being a, what did you call it, a passive park? Makes me wonder what an active park looks like, but.
That's a playground.
Okay, very good. So passive park, I like my passive park too, actually. Okay, and it's the plot of land of the Yendel property.
Can I ask a question about, you mentioned something about the county has an open space program?
Right. It's it runs through the county, but they're actually state funds. They're Department of Natural Resources. So each municipality gets an allocation, but you have to basically apply with an eligible project, which is what I did for Yendel, using the numbers I just gave you. There's also another state program that we have not applied for yet, which is community parks and playgrounds. So program open space, basically the town's been getting sort of a couple thousand deposited into an allocation for Garrett Park for a number of years. It was actually the funding source that was used for Cambria Park for the playground a number of years ago. So as I said, it's a matter of filling out an application with an eligible project.
But my understanding from when we tried a few years ago, everybody tried to turn the dog park into a skate park.
Right.
And I talked to the people at state and they said, well, then you will become a state park.
No.
And it must be maintained according to how it was the day it was finished. And you are responsible for maintaining it. And it will be advertised as a park open to everyone in the state.
It is, there has to be public access, which for a public park, which is obviously what the conservation easement for Yendel actually requires, it has to be a public park. So the town accepted that restriction, if you want to call it that, with the conservation easement on the property.
But public for the entire state, not just for Garrett Park.
Right. I mean, public parks inherently are exactly that. They're public.
Aren't all Garrett parks public parks though?
No.
Yeah, they're not state parks. There's no advertising at the state level other than the funding.
But no one's preventing anyone from coming down to one of Garrett parks and enjoying themselves, I would hope.
Right. The only, because I think this came up at Parks and Open Spaces, as Naveed knows, the question came up like, how much is the park publicized? You are required, as we were with Cambria, to acknowledge, through a small sign that, the state contributed to the project, but there's no mass advertising on a state website and it doesn't change the fact that it is a town park. It doesn't change the legal status of the park in any way.
And it's still searchable for all intents and purposes should anyone want to find it.
Right.
But there are times, for example, during the pandemic, we had a lot of people coming from all over because our dog park had not been shut down. We had people from Alexandria. We had people, and it would be nice to potentially be able to say, no, this is not open to everyone because it is owned by the town.
Was there trouble there?
Nobody's got it. I can't hear. Is that clear?
If anyone wasn't muted, I just muted you just to try to see where the feedback was coming from. But go ahead, Barbara.
No, I was just saying that since it is town owned, it's nice to be able to exert control when we need it. And we did have people coming from out of town who would not wear masks, and it was not pretty. So.
Let's try this again. Can everyone hear me? I apologize.
Yeah.
I think my headphone decided to go kaput. Sorry about that. So I apologize. Barbara, you're saying you would like to exclude outside from Garrett Parkers from using the dog park?
Not generally, but to have the legal authority to say, this is a town park. And if you don't want to comply with masking or whatever regulations, picking up poop, you're not welcome here.
Which should be a rule anyway, anyhow. If you're not going to play.
Yeah, but, you know, to be able to have some legal backing would be nice.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay. I was just wondering, I think my question was, what was there any issues that we had come across during that time frame?
Yeah, we did actually.
Oh, okay. And I missed that. I'm sorry. I mean, I missed hearing it.
Yeah.
They're not ongoing, I hope.
Well, we still have people from, you know, Parkside. We have people from behind the academy. You know, people have no parks over there. They have no yards over there. And I can only foresee it's going to be tougher when they build this big development up at the academy. We will have lots more people using our parks and open space.
We'll have to recommend that they open their own dog park.
Yeah, fat chance of that.
No, you never know.
They won't even provide parking for their own people. So,
but they're pets. Come on. In any case, okay. Thank you, everyone. It is now. I wish I knew what time it is. It is now 7:40. And wanted to thank you for giving me that feedback on the Yendell property and your support. One person who didn't speak, Dick, if it's okay with you, is there anything that you would like to add to what Carolyn and Naveed had said about supporting the Yendell property or moving it up a notch in the list?
I definitely support moving it up to number 3, and whether it goes to 2, I don't think it matters. I guess perhaps the most important thing, or more important, is to let the council know that perhaps it's the top 3 are the ones we think that should be considered more than any of the others. Certainly there's not enough funds to cover all 3. Mm-hmm. And it's up to the council to decide what gets done. And I think they would consider all 3 together.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Donna, can I say one more thing about the dog park?
Absolutely. By all means, Barbara.
The reason that property was purchased, and it was an exchange, it was with the pool bought the property and traded for the lot that we built the new pool on, okay, was because at one point they were threatening to build a bridge from across the tracks to allow people out of that development. And the only way we could prevent them from taking it by adverse possession for domain was by saying it was town property and operated for the benefit of the town people. If it becomes a county or a state property by accepting funding, we may lose that protection. And I don't know that they still want to build a bridge across from Randolph Hills. Mm-hmm. But the whole intent of that property was to block it from being able to be seized and developed as a route.
Mm-hmm. But that was decades ago, and currently it still is.
It was in the 60s.
And also, Barbara said that just because we get those funds doesn't mean it needs to be state funded.
Well, that's not exactly what the state told me.
That would mean the Yendell property would be a state park.
And it might very well become that way, except it will be a state property that we are required to maintain. And we are required to report to them if any damage happens, then we have to repair it and tell them how we fixed it.
Barbara, there's no recommendations of that, I assume. Well, from our discussion, and you're on.
If you accept that funding, you accept their terms and conditions, and you need to read the fine print.
I have. There are certain standards in terms that that you're going to maintain your property in good repair, which I would imagine that the town would do that for any property that it owns, particularly a property that is abutting residential properties. So I think Garrett Park takes great pride in how it maintains town-owned properties. And I would not think that that would be onerous to say that the town should maintain something in a, I can't remember what the exact language is, but that has been shared parks and open spaces. So you don't have to necessarily report anything back, but if you have accept state funding, you're to maintain your property in good order, which I would think the town would do anyway for one of its parks. Don, I did want to mention Carolyn, I think
yes, she does.
Like she was anxiously waiting.
Yes, yes.
I
just figured it was related to what Barbara was saying. I just connected.
That's what I thought too.
Yes, Carolyn.
One little thing, Barbara's right about why that property became town property, but the swimming pool is still owned by the town.
Right.
The pool leases the pool. It's town property.
Okay.
So thank you for letting me make that.
Oh, no, thank you. I appreciate your time. Okay. Barbara, I hope I did not cut you off. Was there anything else? I just wanted to make sure.
No, I just think
Barbara could address.
It is not as easygoing as it sounds. And we will be listed as a county or a state park at that point.
So are you saying then, you're not saying that are you saying, I should be more specific, are you saying that the Yandell property would be listed as a state park in that case?
Yes.
No. Apparently not.
But why do we have to use the state money? Why use the state money for the Yandell property then?
Why not?
Then it'll be clear.
We have plenty.
To worry
plenty
about.
To do. If we can get state money and use this, I think that's a plus.
Okay.
Okay.
Hi, this is Kavita. If you don't, could I make one way of thinking about this is, I mean, maybe it's not the best way of looking at it, but these funds they're fungible in that, could we focus on things that are time sensitive and that we can get done, and then maybe allocate other funds for the funds that would be saved, for the other projects. Does that make sense?
It does, Kavitha, and I think that's sort of what Dick had urged the group to think of, just being cognizant. And Dick, I certainly speak for yourself, but I think that's the point you have made, which is that these funds have certain deadlines on them, and to be cognizant of that.
Yes, that's right. I agree.
And the funds
one other thing,
also have the same deadlines, not the same ones, but deadlines as well.
I was going to say one other thing. This has nothing to do with perhaps our discussion. Porcupine Woods, I believe, was bought with state funds. A grant back in the 70s.
I don't think so. I disagree.
Find out.
Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Dick. Well, in today's day and age of internet, I firmly believe if there's a will, there's a way. Even if it's not listed, somebody will find it. If
Donna?
you're determinative. Yes, ma'am.
I am committed to watching the hearing tonight. So let's start wrapping up, please.
Carolyn, I can always count on you to be that timer in the corner. Thank you. With that, thank you, Carolyn. Let's wrap this up. As I mentioned earlier, so today will be our quote unquote wrap up of the task force until we are called to action again, if we're called to action again. For the time being, I want to thank everybody for their input, their feedback, their I can tell hearts and souls and their lives into this. I greatly appreciate your dedication to your town and to making this place the Garrett Park that we all know and love. It shows, and it is greatly appreciated, and makes me personally, a joy to be a council member, to represent all of you and get your feedback and make sure that we're doing what we want to do as a town. It's not the smoothest, democracy usually isn't, but that's okay. That's how we got here, and that's how we'll continue. And for that, again, thank you very, very much. If there is another meeting, either myself or Barbara will get back in touch with you. If that's okay. If there is some reason that any of you cannot or don't want to be on the task force, please let us know. We do hope you will maintain being on this task force. And again, thank you very much once again for your time and work on this. Barbara, would you like to say any other closing thoughts?
No, just thank all of you for your participation and just your engagement in this. It's been very, very helpful.
And with that, Carolyn, everyone can go and watch the debate. Thank you again, everyone. Have a great night.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Night.
Bye-bye.